These are the pros and cons of state funds. All right guys, welcome back, and if you're new here, welcome. My name is Spencer Van, and in today's video I'm going to be talking about the pros and cons of state funds. And yes, I know I'm a little bit biased. Okay, obviously we teach state funds. We've made a lot of money from state funds. Our students have made a lot of money from state funds. But I am going to be as honest as I possibly can be. But just grain of salt, I'm going to obviously be a tiny bit biased one direction. But with that being said, if you guys do enjoy this video, click the like button, hit the subscribe button down below, and of course hit the notification bell, because once per month we actually give away a free mini course that teaches state funds on a live stream. We get notified when we go live, so you can potentially win that mini course. Now, with that being said, let's just jump right into today's video, what are the pros and cons of state funds? And the reason why I wanted to make this video is because there's so many of you guys that are, brand new, jumping into the surplus fund world. And if you're new here, again, welcome. Super excited to have you. But very excited and wanting to make money. And you have this belief that, hey, state funds are the best place to start. And in many cases, they are. And part of the reason why you probably believe that is because I know I've said that many times. State funds is the best place for beginners to start. And while that is true about 90% of the time, there is a 10% time where that's not true. And so I'm going to be talking about that today and really help you make a more informed decision on really if state funds is the best one to start with for you. So let's start with some of the pros. What are the biggest pros of state funds? Well, the leads are pretty simple and straightforward to get. Now, it doesn't mean it's going to be easy to get, and in a lot of states it is easy to get, but some states, it's like they got to mail you a CD. It takes like 3-4 weeks. Or maybe even longer. So, it can take a little bit of while. It can be a little bit difficult, but the steps themselves are pretty simple. You just contact the state and ask for the list, right? It's really not that difficult, okay? So leads are, fairly simple to get. Quantity of leads, meaning, how many leads are out there? Well, there's literally, almost $100 billion worth of state funds floating around. So tons of money to be collected. Tons of people, to contact. And in fact, I think I read a report on, it was either CNN or MSNBC or something that said 1 in 10 Americans is owed unclaimed property or state funds, right? That's obviously a lot of people, right? 1 in 10. I'll give you an example. I was at my CEO mastermind. I'm part of a CEO group, and there's 12 people in the group, and 2 of them were owed money. One was owed $20, the other one was owed $2,000, right? So, I could have just made a quick $200 right there. Obviously, I didn't charge them because they're friends, but you get the point. The leads are simple, and there's a whole lot of them, right? So those are some of the 2 biggest pros. Another one is, or one of the reasons why there's so many leads there is because it kind of stays there for a long time, in fact, pretty much forever, right, in most places. So, for example, my grandmother from the 1960s was owed $7,000, and I helped her recover that. Again, I didn't charge her because she's family. But, I found it for her, I called her, I walked her through the steps of getting it. And again, this is from the 1960s, right? So, it's 2021, it's been, 50 years, right? So there's money there from, decades and decades ago that even if the person that's owed it is still, not alive, then their heirs would be the ones that are owed, right? So I guess overall, biggest pros, there's a lot of opportunity. One of the other pros is that it's, pretty straightforward as far as contracts and, ways to get started. So a lot of states, they'll just provide you a contract. And even if they don't, they'll give you really, really simple, exact guidelines on what it needs to be, what needs to be in the contract. And you can usually just print out those guidelines and give it to an attorney and say, here, make me a contract that, matches all this criteria. And they'll usually make you one for a couple $100. Or if you're part of Surplus Mastery, of course, we give those out for free. Like we have our attorney, write them up basically. So, contracts are pretty easy to get. And overall, it's a pretty, the processing's really simple, okay? You don't have to work with an attorney on processing. You literally just get the contract signed, you send it into the state, and the state will either send you a check or they'll send the claimant a check and you just invoice the claimant. So it's really, really, really overall, everything about state funds is just simple. And that's one of the reasons why I've been promoting it as kind of the best place for beginners to start, because it's simple. And simple is, a lot of times undervalued, right? But it is very, very important, especially when you're just learning everything. So those are some of the biggest pros, but what are some of the biggest cons to doing state funds? Well, the first one that comes to mind is State funds is much more of a volume-based business than mortgage funds or tax funds or even bankruptcies. And, the way to scale a business is to do one of two things. Number one is you sell a lot of something you don't make that much money on. So for example, you sell, 100,000 items that are $10 each. Well, then you just made $1 million, right? Or you sell very little of something that is very, very, very expensive. So for example, you sell 100 items that are $10,000 each. Well, hey, you just made $1 million as well, right? And most business people agree that typically speaking, it is way easier. You make way more money and way more profit by having a high margin business than a high volume business. So the latter of those two examples, selling something for very, very expensive. Well, state funds is not that. State funds is a business where you're looking to close as many deals as possible because you may only make $2,000, $3,000, $4,000, $5,000, $10,000 at most on a deal with state funds. And that's because, most states, you're capped at a pretty low percentage. California is 10%. Most states between 10 and 20%, right? So of course, if you're making 10 grand a month, a lot of people are happy with that. But if you're someone that wants to make 100 grand a month and you're only making 4 grand a deal, you're gonna have to close a lot of deals. And that's, one of the biggest differences with state funds is that it's volume based. So, again, you may only make 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 on a deal, whereas with mortgage funds or tax funds, you may be able to on the same deal make 10,000, right? So if you're, sort of same deal as far as same size deal, right? So it's a $50,000 deal. State funds, you might only make 5. Tax funds or mortgage funds, you might make 20, right? Or 15. So you're making 3 times as much per deal. It's way easier to scale up to bigger numbers, okay? So that's kind of the first biggest con there is with state funds. Now, what's the next biggest con? Well, the next biggest con is processing times. Now, this one is kind of a con and kind of not a con because it depends on the state. So for example, in California, you can wait 6 months to get a check, right? Especially right now with COVID and just everyone's rushing to California, so they're kind of overrun right now. You can wait 6 months. I've heard, and I've never done a deal in Hawaii, but one of my students was telling me in Hawaii, it takes a week. So again, processing times are really dependent on what state you're working in and how good their process is, but it can literally range from a few weeks to a few months to 6 months plus, right? And it makes it worse too if you don't do the paperwork right and all of that. But just keep that in mind that processing times are gonna be pretty long and they're really completely out of your control with the exception of doing the paperwork right at the state fund niche, okay? Whereas with mortgage overages and tax overages, you're still gonna have obviously some processing time, but if you have the right attorney and you do things the right way, you can definitely speed things up, right? So keep that in mind. And those are really the 2 biggest cons of state funds. If you guys like this video, I will do a pros and cons of each niche of mortgage overages slash funds, whatever you wanna call it, tax overages slash funds, whatever you wanna call it, and even of bankruptcy. So let me know if you guys want to see those videos, comment down below. And if you did like this video, hit the like button if you wouldn't mind. It helps us out with the algorithm. And of course, hit the subscribe button and the notification bell to see when we go live with those free mini courses. And I'll talk to you soon.